right off the bat, I am going to invite you. This is your special invitation. This is your sign. If you've been on the fence, if you've been waiting for the right time, which there is no right time. Girl, today I want to invite you to join me for my next Kickstart. My next 6-week small group Kickstart program starts May 30th. Do not hesitate. Do not wait to get in on this, because this time I'm doing something very special and different, and I'm excited about it. And that is, get in here now. Deadline to sign up is the 29th, but don't wait, because once you get in, you're going to immediately get access to the Rock That Fitness app. You're going to immediately be inside of a group, getting everybody together early so y'all can just kind of chit chat, get to know each other inside of the community, inside of the app. But you'll be able to already execute and start some strength training, some Rock That Fitness strength training right in the app right now today. Check it out in the show notes. Super excited about this round. You want to get in here on this. And as always, you don't have to wait to join Rock That Fitness membership. But anyway, this is really the best way to get started with me. And this is actually, I think being a part of this 6-week program, I know being a part of this 6-week program is one of the best ways to be successful long-term in your fitness, your health, your fat loss journey. If you are sick and tired of dieting, the dieting game, if you have been struggling and you feel like you've been starting over, or you feel like you're just too busy, or you are an all or nothing person having this struggle with all or nothing, all the mind games that we play with ourselves, right? When we're doing some kind of a plan and we've started over, and you have a fear of doing one more thing. If any of those things resonate with you, this is for you, girl. I'm here to help you. I know I can help you. So check it out in the show notes, and I look forward to working with you in round 14 of Kickstart. Okay. Why we're here today in this episode. What if the reason you are feeling exhausted, inflamed, that word likes to get, that's a word that the guy, can't even talk, that's a word that likes to get thrown around, struggling with your fat loss, or low energy, or poor sleep. Maybe your sleep is off, but what if it's showing up in your labs before it shows up in any kind of a diagnosis? This week, I sit down with the blood work and lab expert, Connie Nightingale. Super excited for this episode, for this is one of the most important conversations that we've had yet when it comes to understanding your blood work, your hormones, your thyroid, your metabolism, and becoming empowered, an empowered advocate, and knowing for yourself in your own health. This conversation, every woman needs to hear. It doesn't matter your age. Let's get into it. All right, Connie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your hectic schedule. I know you have a lot going on. Yes. Connie Nightingale. I love your name.
Thank you.
Let me let my listeners know. I know I did a little intro here before we came on, but just to let them know, you guys, this woman is amazing. I just met her, and she passed the test on everything. I don't just let anybody come on to the podcast, and you guys know that, but she's truly amazing. I just met her at the Real Coaches Summit. This is Connie Nightingale. She's a functional health and performance coach specializing in lab interpretation, which is why, the big reason why we have her on the podcast today, hormone balance and total body optimization. And so she has an approach that bridges fitness, nutrition, and the root cause of health, helping clients go beyond normal labs to truly feeling their best, which I am all about that. Mm-hmm. Labs are great, but when you don't know how to interpret them so that you can have optimization, then what's the point? And that's what we want. We want optimization. So, Connie, on the personal human side, I asked you if you could tell us a little bit about who is Connie, and tell us who you are, a little bit about you.
Oh, that's very difficult to put into a sweetened, condensed version, but essentially, I've always been a very active person. And then in 2012, it was a slew of things, but in 2012, I was diagnosed with AFib. I also was struggling with infertility all at the same time. And I went into the hospital and essentially, well, first they didn't believe I was having any cardiac issues because I was so young. But also, they were like, okay, well, you have AFib. Now you're going to take these medications. We're going to get you back in rhythm. You're going to take these medications for the rest of your life, and that's going to be that. Well, it wasn't really an AFib problem. It was a thyroid problem. And later on, I learned that that was the case. But the problem is I was always this very fit, active person. I go on all of these beta blockers and stuff, and I start gaining weight like crazy.
Yeah.
And I was not a gym rat. I was in my younger years, but because I had small kids and was really busy, and you know how the early stages of your life are when you are buying houses and going to school, and I've been a lifelong student, and you know, all of these things, it can be very difficult to do the gym thing. But we were still active. We raced motorcycles at a pretty high level, and we were, you know, we mountain biked like anywhere from 18 miles a week. We were on the motocross bikes several times a week, plus racings, which is like full body total workout, probably one of the hardest workouts you could do. And now I'm like a total fitness nut, so I can say that with confidence. And so very active. But where I'm going with this is eventually I changed my diet for other reasons. Actually, for one of my kids that was struggling with some, you know, ADD. Is it really ADD or is it what they mean? No.
Right.
I'm not discounting that, but I think there's too many people placing inactivity, too much screen time, which we don't do screens at our house. My daughter's probably one of the only kids in her school that doesn't have a phone. But, yeah, too many people placing diagnoses on things that could probably be adjusted with lifestyle stuff similar to us as adults, right?
100%.
So, anyways, got into nutrition, changed our diet significantly. I lost like 50 pounds in 6 months.
Check it out.
Yeah, started feeling really, really great. And
naturally.
Yes. With
to throw that in there these days.
There was no drugs involved of any type. I came off all of the cardiac medications that I was taking.
Yes.
And at the time, I had not had a full thyroid diagnosis, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, yes, we fixed it then. But then we got in really good shape and started working out because my life was a little bit better, and I realized I'd lost all the weight, but I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh boy, I was skinny, but I had no muscle tone. I was like totally soft. And I remember that coming to Jesus moment where I looked in the mirror and I was like, the only person that's going to change you is you. And if you don't like what you're looking at, I had reached this place in my life where I realized that there was no pill that was going to do it. There was no diet that was going to do it. The only thing that was going to do it was me and hard work.
Right.
And I had already bridged the nutrition gap, so that wasn't it. It was definitely strength training. So I got into strength training, and I made a commitment to myself that no matter what, every single day, I did this from home to the moms that are listening out there, or the people that think they don't have time. I had 2 very small children. I was working 60 hours a week, you know, in the medical field. And so I was like, hey, you know, I think I'm going to make a commitment to myself. It doesn't need to be a big one, but it needs to be something that I can hold true. I'm not going to hit the snooze button. And I'm going to do this morning fitness routine. So 3 sets of squats, 3 sets of deadlifts, 3 sets of sit-ups, 3 sets of push-ups every day, 10. That's it. And I did it every day, no matter what. Because if you make a promise to yourself, I think the big mistake people make is they compromise. Well, I didn't sleep very good last night, and so I can't do that today. When they talk themselves out of their goals because they're compromising all the time. And my solution to that in life has always been you don't compromise. Like, if you really want something, you're going to make that happen.
Right.
And this is not the kind of fitness routine that if you slept bad or if something happened with your kids or was going to wreck your adrenals or screw you up if you did it in the morning. It's not, you know, nothing crazy, just a daily routine. Then the daily routine started to grow. And then I started seeing results. And I was like, oh, look, tell my husband, look at my leg muscles. Like, over this silly little routine. I start getting actually pretty in good shape from this. This was just 4 things. So then I was like, I need another kettlebell. I need some more dumbbells. Then I started scrolling around on Instagram, and I'm like, what can I do? What else can I do in my bedroom? Because I had all of a sudden like tackled this goal to where it made it to where I could add more and more and more and more. And eventually I'm cleaning out a room in my house, and I've got more and more equipment and body part splits, and then I'm like super jacked, and I was like, I think I'm going to do some bodybuilding shows. That's when I found out that I have problems. And I ended up doing about 5 bodybuilding shows, and I was struggling. And I go into a functional medicine provider that was a bodybuilder, and she was like, oh, you have Hashimoto's disease really bad. And that was when we discovered, oh, guess what? Your thyroid's also not great, which to be expected with bodybuilding. We all know that now. But anyway, it's something, once I figured it out, I realized I probably had it my whole life, honestly. I can remember looking back into high school having struggles with all the things that I was struggling with, and I just thought that was normal. Well, it wasn't. So anyway, I've been in a nutrition rabbit hole for a very long time, and then I started seeing the more and more I was like in the industry, and when I started with nutrition, it was just nutrition. Then I start getting into fitness, and I'm like, oh, I could be a personal trainer, or I start seeing all these gaps, and I'm like, oh, all this fits together. Yeah. So then I start getting into all of the other nuances of health and fitness and how they get together, and getting into the things that people are missing. Sometimes it's not just counting your macros. Sometimes it's not just exercise. Sometimes it's the accumulation of the two. Sometimes it's your outside life. And I start getting into this lab thing, and I've been doing it for a decade now. And even though I started with a really excellent education, I started seeing trends that changed the way I thought about things. So it's kind of the shortened long version of how I got into all these things and what I do. And we live on a farm in North Idaho. I've got 2 kids. We're incredibly busy. I'm currently a power lifter, just a fitness person in general, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and just to let everybody know, I was really drawn to Connie because she gave one of the talks at the Real Coaches Summit, and just really, I don't know, lit a fire under me, because as a nurse, I've always been, just encouraging my clients and all my friends and people, like, get your labs done. But it's not just like, just get your labs done. Like, there's reasons that we need to do that. And I want to just kind of open that up and just bring some light to, like, how important it is, why we want to do that, how often we want to do that, and what we are actually looking for. Because we can't just trust when a doctor says your labs are normal. We just can't do that. Like, we need to educate ourselves and understand what these lab values mean for us individually. So who better to talk to? It sounds like you've been through the ringer, you've been through all the education, and you did an outstanding job on that talk that just put a fire into me. I'm like, yeah, I'm bringing you on the podcast. So why do you believe, like, just from your perspective, the reason that women, we're speaking to women, that's my audience, need to understand and pay attention to their personal blood work, and what does it really mean when people are told that their labs are normal?
So the thing about labs is we're missing a lot of things when we just are looking at a data point on a piece of paper. They're only looking at a demographic. They can change based on the demographic. So East Coast to West Coast would be an example of that, or, South to North. They're also dependent on the lab. So these are just ranges. They don't mean healthy or unhealthy. They're just the range of the population right now, and that range can change. The other thing that's not oftentimes taken into consideration, especially with females that still have a menstrual cycle, is at what point are we in their cyclical cycle? Like, where are they at? Because female hormones, they run on a cycle and they change frequently. So if we don't know what day of the cycle was this tested on, they're not likely to be accurate. There are certain hormones that are supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, and if you don't test them at that time, then you're not going to have an accurate description of what's going on in the body. Also, right. Context is really, really huge. So I see this frequently. People come to me and they're like, I want to run my labs, and And back in the day before I ordered them direct and got the results direct, we would have them do it through like Life Extension or Ulta, and I would spend all this time helping them order their labs, and then they'd never set up any consultation with me, even though I know they had problems, because they were like, oh, well, everything was within range, I was fine. And so a really fine example of this that I gave at the Real Coaches Summit talk was I had a gentleman come to me and his fasting insulin was 5.3. Not fasting glucose. For people out there is a difference. And we could talk about that, but his fasting insulin was 5.3, which would generally be considered normal, and it was marked normal on his labs. But then when you look further into the lab case, his fasting glucose was 151, which is a bit of a red flag for somebody that in a fasting glucose state. But even more so, the red flag was in the context. If your glucose is 151, your insulin should be through the roof, and his wasn't. So even though it was marked normal, in comparison to some of the other things going on, there was a real problem right out the gate by using both labs and looking at both of them, even though one said it was fine. Then you take it one step further, and the gentleman's A1C was 8.7. It's full-blown, like, mega diabetic crisis going on there. So
Right.
this is where context is really, really important, and it gets missed a lot in labs. And another example that I gave at RCS was I just had a basic number up on the screen. It was like ferritin, for example, and it said, range. And in the two different ones that had two different years on them, one, the range was like 25 to 170, and the other one was like 350 to 444 or something like that. So this tells you that these things are always changing. And I guarantee if you're somebody, go back and look at your labs and look at the within range number, you'll see that it changes every single time you get your labs back, based on demographic, based on lab. So this is where if something is not marked black or not, or red or not, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad, because it needs to be looked at within context. It also needs to be taken into consideration that demographic might be sicker or might be healthier than another demographic.
Right. Excuse me. So when I think about those ranges, like what you were just saying, like they're covering a huge group of people, but that doesn't mean like they're considering all kinds of people and all kinds of ages, and so just seeing those ranges doesn't say everything. Correct. And then what I hear you saying beyond that, we can't just take that this is a normal range, this is a normal range, but like paying attention to how they correlate like with each other, how one impacts the other, and those things are important to know as well. Yes. And I can't emphasize this enough, how often I know that people or doctors are just dismissing they're just looking at this as normal, and they just tell their clients it's just, or their patients, this is normal, like you're normal. And then people just go on with their lives. But even beyond, people could be having whatever number of conditions or problems in their body before it even shows up in their labs. But that's why we need to see these things that you're calling trends, not just one picture, one snapshot.
Yes, absolutely. So, and in most cases, your medical provider, they are rushed. And this was a big point that I made at the Real Coaches Summit. We as coaches, we are with our clients a majority of the time. We are the person that sees their sleep habits. We see their family life, their stress levels, their activity levels, their nutrition habits. We see all of it. We know their complaints. And we spend more time with them than anybody. So who better to pay attention to what's going on with labs than a coach? I think it's a great thing. And in most cases, a coach can identify if there's something going askew. So the way I like to do it is I put everybody's labs into a spreadsheet, and I follow all of the trends. What does it look like when we're training hard? What does it look like when we're not? What does it look like when we're at these macros? What does it look like when we're on this macro? What does it look like in comparison to the sleep? And I know that's like, oh wow, that seems crazy, right? But honestly, a basic CBC and a CMP you can get for under $20. Half the people out there are blowing that on a couple coffees at the coffee stand or a Starbucks every week. You could be monitoring your progress. This also takes progress outside of the scale, because I can't tell you how many people, they'll be losing some pounds, not as fast as they want. It's never as fast as anybody wants. Oftentimes people have very unrealistic expectations as to how long it takes to lose fat. But if we see cholesterol is improved, fasting insulin is improved, glucose is improved, if we start seeing these little improvements, liver health is improved, we start seeing these little improvements, we have just taken progress to a next level, which is where it should be, which is with our longevity.
Yeah, 100%. I cannot agree with you more, because people, especially women, and a lot of the women that I work with, they're always just paying attention to the scale, or, we're looking at all these things, these external factors. But when we can actually see that there is progress being made in their health, and this is what matters the most. And when we take these measures in our health, the other things are going to naturally fall in place most of the time if there isn't some kind of medical condition behind that. You just mentioned, there's two things you just mentioned, and I am curious. I don't know if it's the same here, if it's the same in every state, it could be different, but you're saying like we could monitor our own labs. We can just order them ourselves. I want to touch on that in a minute, if you don't mind. But first, can you just tell our audience, explain the differences between the two panels you just said? You said a CMP, and what was the other one? Just can you tell the difference what those are?
So a complete blood count, that's going to have your white blood cells
the CBC.
in it, your hematocrit, it's going to have blood viscosity in there. It's going to have like the types of white blood cells and your glucose your glucose is in the CMP and all that stuff. Then you do the CMP, and that's going to have your glucose, your liver, your kidneys. Hopefully you can, lipids, I think you got to, it depends on the panel and where you get it. Many times they will come as a package, and you can get lipids in there as well. CMP is also covering electrolytes and stuff like that. And then lipids. And lipids are a great one because they can actually kind of allude to how good your sugar handling is. So you would take a look at your HDL, LDL, triglycerides, and your blood glucose, and that can kind of give you an indication as to how well this person handling sugar. Are they mobilizing energy to the places that they should be? If you want to take that one step further, you can run fasting insulin, which I highly recommend, because ultimately a lot of these things build a puzzle, and if we start pulling out pieces in the middle, like fasting insulin, for example, can we get a great idea with looking at triglycerides and lipids and glucose and A1C? Yeah, we can look at all of that. But if we start adding more and more pieces, the picture gets much clearer. So that's those basic tests, those CBC, CMP, lipids usually are about under $20. If you go on Life Extension or Ulta, it's like $35 for all of them, because those guys take their piece of the pie. You can, in many cases, you can walk right into a lab and request your own labs. Except for in New York, Rhode Island, New Jersey, I think, are some ones that won't let you do that. But there's a few states, but for the most part, you can walk right in and order your own labs as well. And those give you a good baseline. Like, how well is my basic metabolic function? The other thing is in your CBC, in your CBC, MCV, MCH, these are the sizes of our cells, essentially.
Yeah.
These are things that can indicate whether we have nutrient deficiencies and things like that. So there's a lot of really high quality things we can get out of just the basic panel. Now, there are other things that should be monitored, like you alluded to earlier, that can be caught early on. And so the medical system oftentimes doesn't catch things until they're already a crisis. That's like the check engine light's been on for a while in our car, but we completely ignored it because it was still running, right?
Yeah.
And the motor blows up because you didn't have any oil, and now you have a crisis, and it's expensive, and it's difficult to fix. And that's how our body systems are as well in many cases. Yeah. So we can pull over and take a look at what's going on with the car, check the codes, see what's going on, so that we can see what we need to improve, so we don't get to that point where our motor runs out of oil and we're broken down on the side of the road, and now we have a much bigger problem.
Right. Because especially as we're aging, we're heading into like 40s, 50s, and 60s. When these crises happen, it's not because it just happened. It's because over time, lifestyle and how we've been living is impacting these systems in our body. So another panel, or I don't know if this is part of the panel, thyroid is going to be something, and also sex hormones. So those are separate. And so could we just, so you're saying I could just go into LabCorp and request my labs and say, I want to get a CBC, I want to get a CMP, I want to get my thyroid checked, I want to get my sex hormones, and we can get the full thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Labs
Okay.
will test labs. You can order anything online, Life Extension or Ulta Labs. There's a lot of options now as far as ordering labs and a lot of services that can do it. Uh,
Okay.
Ideally, you are going to take a look at a CBC, a CMP, lipids, full thyroid, not just
Full thyroid.
TSH, because TSH is the thyroid stimulating hormone. That's the hormone that's secreted by the brain that tells the thyroid to turn on.
Right.
That's the typical one that Western medicine checks. And that's because they believe, which this is true, it does hold true, but that number, if the body becomes in a crisis because it's not getting enough thyroid hormone, that number goes up. But typically you are at that out of motor oil place by the time that number starts to get elevated. So there are other numbers that we can look at, like free T3, free T4, TPO antibodies. I think 1 in 5 women now have Hashimoto's or antibodies, which can oftentimes be prevented. So there's a lot that you can see there. Reverse T3, this tells us if we're getting enough nutrition, if we're under certain amounts of stress that might have us putting our usable thyroid hormone in a warehouse to be used for later on. There's a lot of things, quality things we can get out of thyroid. Now, it is a little bit more expensive, not awful, but that would be more so one that I would run one time, the full panel, and then if something needed adjusting, we would a la carte or pick and choose moving forward. Something great to look at the trends with as well. So the way this works is, like I alluded to, the brain tells the thyroid to turn on, that secretes TSH, thyroid turns on. When the thyroid turns on, we are looking at the free version, secretes something called free T4. We can kind of think of this like the petroleum that comes out of the ground and is pumped out by the drilling rig. Can't put that directly in our car. It has to be changed into fuel, which is what we take out of the gas pump and put in our car. So then our body takes T4 and it turns it into T3, which is gasoline, and that's used in our cells. So there are a lot of things that can happen with the thyroid, though. It can just not produce enough thyroid hormone due to a variety of things that are going on. Nutrient deficiencies, stress, Hashimoto's disease, there's all sorts of things that can go on there. Or it can produce enough petroleum, but the petroleum isn't getting turned into gasoline, which can be gut health, also nutrient deficiencies, liver health, lots of things that can go on there. Or you can take from that petroleum and store it in a warehouse to be used for later in cases of malnutrition would be one. So people that have eating disorders oftentimes have extremely high reverse T3 levels. I just saw one the other day that was like 40. Because their body is in a crisis and it's like, no, we're not spending money anymore, basically. Starts filing that away. There's a lot of things that need to be paid attention to with the thyroid. So it's important that you run those, and then if we see things that are tweaked off a little bit, then we can run the next set of labs accordingly. So, yeah, that's the thyroid. Sex hormones, really important. If you're in that perimenopausal, menopausal range, FSH and LH are really important to look at to see if they're starting to elevate, indicating that the female is no longer cycling. And
Okay.
yeah, so what happens is when you start to lose your menstrual cycle or the ovaries production slows down, the brain starts yelling at the ovaries, basically with FSH and LH, telling it, hey, you're not done, you got a job to do, and the ovaries are like, we're done. So the signal from the brain gets really loud, and that's FSH and LH, and we can look at those and kind of get an idea of what's going on. I can't tell you how many times I've had females come to me and they're like, oh, I'm menopausal, and then we take a look at their labs and they are not menopausal at all. They've lost their cycle due to a variety of reasons, or ablation, or maybe they had a hysterectomy. Like, there's a million things that could happen, right? But they're not menopausal. So, or I actually had a lady end up pregnant because she thought she was menopausal and she wasn't. So that's a whole, once we got nutrition and fitness and weight loss, all of a sudden somebody that thought they couldn't have children had one. So there's also cases like that. So, but that's one that you don't have to run every time, right? It could be more of an annual thing. Looking at estradiol, and namely, as one of the low-hanging fruits. If you have an issue, then you can dive further into these things. But one thing I will say is oftentimes with labs, if we know there's something going on surface level or we see little indications, diving further is not really necessary. This is a thing I see going wrong in the health, fitness, functional health industry right now, is they are testing the crap out of everybody. They want Dutch tests and GI maps and all this comprehensive testing. It costs thousands of dollars. Why do we need that in most cases? Because most of the time we can see an issue on the surface, so why don't we go address that first? And if we still aren't getting results, maybe employ some of the other strategies. But oftentimes jumping to those strategies first is not necessary. So once a year maybe on the FSH, LH. Once somebody's postmenopausal, you don't really have to worry about it once you see it on paper and they're not having a cycle. And then estradiol and progesterone are really important to run, because I think the problem goes both ways, but a lot of females postmenopausally have incredibly low estrogen. And while we are entitled to have low estrogen postmenopausally, because that's a normal thing that happens with the body, some people end up lower than what low okay is, because naturally if a female is in a good health place, they're going to have a decline in estrogen, but their estrogen is going to be okay. The problem is, and I think I've seen this a ton with the people that I work with, is everybody has this negative stigma around perimenopause and menopause and losing hormones and all this. What they don't realize is their habits influence how big that change impacts them. Yes. So you see a lot of females that are athletic and they take really good care of themselves and they eat right and they have no problem. Talk to most of them, they're like, I had no problem with my transition. I might have had a couple hot flashes here and there, and I'm
so
good.
True.
Right?
Oh my God, that's so true.
Then you have the lady that's chronically stressed, doesn't eat well, doesn't exercise well, or exercises too much. The street goes both ways. And they are having a hell of a time. And they're like, I'm perimenopausal and I'm menopausal.
Right.
And all this, and I have hot flashes and I'm miserable. Because our bucket is overfilled. You haven't allowed your body the tools it needs to make the transition the way that would be optimal. So now you're in the negatives. So one thing I will say with postmenopausal females is your estrogen can naturally be in an okay place. And estrogen is incredibly important, and I think this is something that's missed. Like if a female has had a hysterectomy and their ovaries have been removed and their doctor hasn't put them on hormones, shame on them, because it is incredibly important to the life and longevity of that patient. So it's involved in your bone health. Like how many women end up with osteoporosis postmenopausally? You know, joint tissue health, skin elasticity. I think one great example of this is you guys are in the fitness industry, and I'm sure you've seen female bodybuilders, their skin looks really horrible. Yes. Due to low estrogen. Yeah. So they lose that fullness. They get that saggy, wrinkly feeling look to them. It's because their estrogen is critically low chronically. So it's very involved in that. Cardioprotective. Why do females have lots of heart attacks postmenopausally? Because they don't have estrogen protecting them. So there's so many things where it's like really, really important. And yes, to some degree, it does go lower as you age. But is it lower, healthy lower, or is it lower, bad lower? And that's when HRT and things needs to be considered. Or lifestyle changes. I oftentimes try to do the lifestyle portion first so somebody's not stuck on a hormone, but it also depends on a lot of things. How willing is somebody to jump into those lifestyle changes? Because in many cases, people aren't for it. And then for the betterment of their health, I mean, overall, their cholesterol, everything, they need estrogen. So that's when going on to HRT might be a consideration that needs to be made. So there's that portion. There's also if a female gets feeling horrible enough, how excited are they going to be about making a change? So another thing we need to consider is you might have to get somebody feeling better to where they're even open to making lifestyle changes. Because if you feel like total crummy crap, you're not going to want to go to the gym. You're not going to want to meal prep. You're not going to want to do anything. You're going to have poor mental health. You know, estrogen's really involved. Estrogen and progesterone both are very much involved in our mental well-being. So at some points you have to take considerations into what is best for the person as well and their scenario. And that's why there's not like a one size fits all answer when it comes to a lot of these, the way it's being approached in our current health and medical state. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of is overprescription of a lot of these hormones. Like, we postmenopausally, we don't need to have crazy amounts of progesterone. Now, estrogen and progesterone need to be balanced, but we need to pay attention to how high our doses are and how high these levels are, because it can actually be detrimental in other ways when you start boosting these outside of the physiological normal range. So those are some other considerations.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think that, everybody needs to know that everybody's body is metabolizing these, if they are taking supplemental hormones, that we are going to metabolize them differently, and you may not need that much, but to pay attention to what's happening with your body and whatever side effects you might be having or not having, but to share that with your provider so that they can make the adjustments. That is so important, especially you don't just go on hormones and everything's fine. Like, there is a process. Can you talk us through a little bit of that? Because this is like so important. Women think they just take the hormones that the doctors prescribe and that's it, but it's not. Like, there really should be a process that you go through to determine what the right levels are for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously everybody's different and that process is going to look different. With what I do, I like to see how much we can optimize with lifestyle factors first. Now, like I said, there are considerations with that. That's step number one. Step number two, you've decided to go on HRT or you've had a hysterectomy and you no longer have ovaries. Step number two, go into your provider and get started on something. Low dose, preferably. You don't need to jump to the highest dose. So making sure that you're starting at the lowest levels and working your way up slowly, I think, is really important. There's too many people that are getting thrown on something right away at the top level. So starting low and slow is really, really important. And what is your biofeedback? This is something we should be paying attention to. Like, where's your weight? Are you retaining water? How do you feel? Are you tired at night? All of these things need to be paid attention to.
Yeah.
And
yep.
Very, very important, not every provider is created equal. If you smell something fishy going on, ask for another opinion. Find a different provider. I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, you're better off finding a DO or somebody in the integrative medicine space typically, although some of those people can very much overprescribe, but others underprescribe or don't believe in it. So these are all things that you need to pay attention to. But yeah, I think getting started and monitoring it on the paper as well, because not enough people are paying attention to what's going on paper either. So they'll go on the hormones and their provider never runs them again for like another year. So paying attention to all these things is super, super important, and have somebody in your corner to help track your trends. Like, how are you feeling at X dose? What did it look like on paper at X dose? Next time you run your labs, where are you at? How are you feeling? What does it look like? How are you responding to it? How's your libido? How's your sleep? Like, all these things really, really matter. So ultimately, the overall feeling we have is really important. And what else is going on with that? Because your hormones might be great, but what if your thyroid's not?
Yeah.
You're going to struggle with a lot of these symptoms overlap. So looking at the big picture can be really important in these, and getting regular feedback.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. And I love that you're saying, like, let's start with lifestyle if you are able to start with lifestyle changes. And I can't emphasize this enough. The whole thing here is to take an actively participate in your health by knowing what's going on with your blood work, because your blood work with all of these panels are going to show you what's happening with your internal, what's happening inside with all of your systems. And so I just, we cannot really emphasize that enough. We're talking cardiac, we're talking your kidneys, your thyroid, everything is happening in this blood work. And if you can see this, you're going to be so much more empowered. So when you do this, like you said, pay attention, and not every provider is created equally.
Yes.
So this leads me to the next question. What are some key questions we need to be asking our provider when it comes to our blood work? I know that's really broad, but maybe you can just kind of like a few things to.
I think rather than asking questions to your provider, you need to be equipped with a better understanding of yourself and your physiology and your own lab work and what that means. It doesn't mean being an expert, but it means knowing that, liver enzymes elevated, that could be, what do these do? How do they impact other things? Kidney function, what's that look like? How does it impact other things? There's a million YouTube videos in there. If you're like, how do liver enzymes work? They'll tell you.
Yes, you can find out.
Have a coach in your corner that can explain these things and educate you. I think if a provider is not open to changing things, that's a huge red flag, though. So I could give you an example. Is I've seen people come to me on like 500 or 600 milligrams of progesterone daily, which is way too much in most cases. And when they asked their provider if they could lower it because they weren't feeling good, their provider was like, no, this is what you need to be on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think any provider not open to making changes based on a patient's feedback needs to be questioned. So
yes, it's okay to get a second opinion.
Yes. I think, being a provider needs to be first and foremost open to things and able to explain them well. Another provider that I recently was working with, the client's TSH was low, which will happen if you are medicated. There are cases of over-medication where TSH will be completely bombed out, and then there's other factors you can look at as far as, like, is this a problem or not? But the client, they were like, your TSH is too low, we want to take you off of the medication. What they failed to look at was the fact that they weren't converting over to T3. So the client really needed to be on a T3 supplementation of some kind.
Okay.
And they weren't open to that because their TSH was slightly suppressed. It wasn't even suppressed a ton. And so I think these are cases where they need to explain why and what they looked at and do a little interrogation. And if you feel like you're not getting what you need or you're still not feeling well, then get a second opinion. And just because a provider says you need to be on a medication doesn't necessarily mean you need to be on a medication either. I think we should probably dive into the cholesterol conundrum because that's a big thing right now. And I will tell you, I remain pretty guarded in the cholesterol category. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Especially in the functional medicine and like podcast, TikTok type pushes, people are like, oh, if your cholesterol is high, carnivore, keto type people too. If your cholesterol is high, you're not at risk as long as your CRP is low. That is false.
Talk to us.
Yeah, that's
give us
false.
The goods.
Because just because your CRP is low, yes, maybe your risk is low, but if you've calcified a bunch of stuff, you're still at risk. And I had a client of mine a long time ago end up having a heart attack after 10 weeks into working with her. And she was, luckily, the end story of this is that I actually ended up being instrumental in her surviving that heart attack because we had lowered all of her risk factors in 10 weeks enough to where they believe that gave her a fighting chance. But something to keep in mind is there's a big push for medications in cases of high LDL cholesterol, when I think it's vital, if you're dealing with cholesterol issues, to get a coronary calcium scan. See what your risk is. Yeah. Because it will tell you if there is calcifications, and I can't tell you how many people have come to me looking like pure hell. Their LDL is through the roof. It'll be in the 200s and 300s. Their inflammation, their HSCRP inflammation will be through the roof as well. And then they'll get a coronary calcium scan and it'll be 0.
Oh.
That person would have gone on a medication that would have impacted them in many ways beyond, and they didn't need it. Do they need to get their cholesterol under control? Yes, but is it a problem imminently? No. So there are things that need to be taken into consideration too. That's a great one. If you don't have insurance, they're about $200 out of pocket. You could literally save your own life. So if somebody is suggesting cholesterol, but I'm saying get out there and actually do a little bit of research. Ask your doctor to do a coronary calcium scan. Ask them, do I have calcifications? Is this an imminent problem? It could be. It could be even if your cholesterol isn't astronomically high. So it could have saved her life had she have had one. And then at that point, if you say you do have calcifications, now it's time to figure out something else. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a really big one. And then find out if the cholesterol problem is a nutritional problem or if it's a genetic problem. There are other things that we can look at. We can look at lipoprotein A, ApoB. We can see more of the big picture when it comes to risk. So I typically tell people if they have high cholesterol, start with an ApoB, a lipoprotein A. A question we had at the conference was, would you run those? I think it was on day one. They were like, would you run that if you saw high cholesterol? And I said, absolutely, because it might be something that you have to bring to the attention of the provider.
Wow.
Oftentimes they may not run that stuff, but if we do and we present them with that information, we might have just saved that person's life. So,
wow.
And I've had this happen with multiple cases where they're like, are you stepping outside of your scope of practice by ordering more tests when you see a problem? And I say, absolutely no. Yes, we do want to send that person to the proper provider, but we can order more tests. Send
you
it.
Can get your test.
It's like light bulb. Oh, I do see there's a problem here. And I think an example of this is not long ago, I had a lady that had a growth on her pituitary gland, which is actually pretty common, but her prolactin levels were really, really high. Her provider was failing to say that there was anything wrong with her. And we looked at her prolactin and they were really, really high. And so then we ran a couple other tests as well. And I fortunately work with a great team of professionals. And the guy that I work with, I sent him a voice message because he likes voice messages. But I sent him a voice message and I was like, hey, I just saw so-and-so. I'm sending them over to you. I think they're going to need an MRI to rule out a pituitary tumor. I went ahead and ran ATCH as well because and prolactin. I had noticed it before, the prolactin and prolactin. I want to see if those are also elevated. And he's like, that's wonderful. That's exactly what I would have done. Now he's more forward thinking, but you might have to present that data to other providers as well, or they're going to set it aside. So sometimes just presenting the data and being equipped with it is also really important because you can take it to that provider and show them that there is actually a problem and this person isn't just crazy or a hypochondriac either.
Yeah, absolutely. All that. And the idea that, there's some providers just want to, hurry up and give you a bunch of whatever supplements, whatever they want to give you without starting out or finding out about lifestyle. That stuff is so important. I just kind of want to go that direction since I know that a lot of these things that you're talking about, Connie, are going over people's heads because it's a lot for the average person. They're going, oh my gosh, and they're, it's confusing. And so I'm hoping to help my people have a better understanding in how to read their labs, how to interpret their lab. They don't need to really be able to interpret it themselves. It's good to have somebody like you who is an expert, but to at least know what they're looking at and why they're looking at these labs when it comes to their body's systems. But I guess the part that because I know we're about to run out of time here, I want to wrap up with just really emphasizing the importance of two things: knowing what your blood work is, what is your baseline on these things, and then don't wait to start making lifestyle changes because you can truly impact your health in a positive direction. Just start taking action, and little things are going to matter. Can you just speak to those two things as we wrap up? Because I just think that people really need to know that they have so much power over so much when it comes to their health and their longevity. Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess the best thing to say with this is start getting these things done. Don't wait. I have so many people that are like, oh, once I lose weight, I'm going to run my labs. Why are you waiting? You can establish a baseline. And the labs are just a little snapshot in time, like we talked about in the beginning. So establishing what your baseline is and what's normal for you, too. Some people, a good example of this would be A muscular person is going to have higher liver enzymes than a person that's not muscular. You can use your kidney markers to establish, like, how good are you handling the protein you're eating? Are you eating enough? Are you eating too much? Are you, like, not eating enough? Like, there's a lot of this. I can tell you there was a lady, this was not long ago, probably 8 months ago. Her blood urea nitrogen was like 9, 8. I was like, how much protein are you getting a day? She's like, oh, I don't know. I have a little bit of cheese. I'm like, what else do you eat that's protein? She's like, I don't know. I was like, do you eat meat? No protein shakes, no nothing. This lady was literally only eating a little bit of cheese every day. Everything else was carbohydrates. And I'm guessing she was maybe getting 35 or 40 grams of protein tops. Well, that was reflected in her blood urea nitrogen. It was low. She wasn't spilling a lot off as waste. So there are things that we can use to identify if our nutrition is optimal with these things as well. How well are we hydrated? Like, another example would be kidney function. Somebody might come back to you and have really crazy looking kidney numbers, but maybe they were just dehydrated. Okay, that's a $3 test. Rerun it and see what their baseline is. Maybe their glucose levels were really high. Maybe they had poor sleep the night before. Starting to establish a baseline and doing these things regularly can be really, really helpful in understanding your body and how it functions as well. I mean, anyone would love to see my labs as they are. I run them frequently, and you can see all the crazy changes based on where I'm at in a training cycle, or how much sleep I've had, or what my nutrition and things like that. So getting a better understanding, like, I can tell you, I, as a coach, would not recommend anything to anybody that I haven't tried, right? So I've tried all sorts of things. I will tell you, carnivore diet, I felt the best I ever felt, but my thyroid looked the worst. And my liver enzymes, there were like a lot of things that looked really poor. My kidney function was bad, and coming out of it, trying to get my gut microbiome rebalanced was also a nightmare.
I bet.
It was funny because I felt great then, but for how long would it have been that I felt great at those numbers before everything started falling apart? And I think that's something people fail to realize, is they'll be like, I did keto and I felt great, and anytime I brought stuff back in, I felt like crap. Well, the reason is because likely you bombed your microbiome, number one, right? Number two, if your thyroid's down-regulated because you've not been eating properly, or you're already under too much stress, or kind of scenario, right?
Right.
Eating properly, guess what? Now you're going to gain weight easier. Or if you starved, like that Optavia diet or whatever that people do. And now we're seeing it in GLPs as well. People are not getting in enough nutrition. They're having a down regulation in their metabolic systems, and then they go off of a medication, or they try to bring food back in, and they end up gaining a bunch of weight back because they're metabolically down regulated. So just because something's working for you right now doesn't mean it's right. And that's another thing you need to pay attention to.
Oh my God, that's so good. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of, I'm not going to name names, but I can think of bodybuilders. I like them. I respect them as humans. What I don't respect is their inability to be open to making changes with things. So I was working with a ketogenic bodybuilder, and he's telling everybody, this is the way. This is how we should be. We should eat carnivore. Look how great I look. But could you look better?
Yeah, but how are you looking inside?
Right. Oh, well, that's the other one, right? Yeah. You could look better, too. But you're
could look better. Right.
To making changes and seeing what works well for your body if you're stuck in one ideology. So,
true.
There are so many ways we could take this. But, yeah, I think overall, establishing your trends, you don't have to be a genius to make a spreadsheet or have ChatGPT make you a spreadsheet and put all of these things in and start comparing them side by side. Like,
yes.
Hey, how did this look?
Yeah.
Really, you can see changes just being the normal person, not having any understanding whether they're positive or negative. So I think getting your labs done, tracking them, have a coach that maybe works with you and helps you do that as well. These are all really, really good things. And have a better understanding of your body.
Yeah, totally. Totally. This is awesome. You can, everybody listening, just you have so much more power over your health, your longevity, everything going on inside of your systems of your body. Yes, I want to encourage you to please get your blood. And how often do you recommend we get our full blood work panels done?
I personally love every year, at least one time a year, and then at that like 6 month mark, if there was something I was working on, I'll run like the basics, and then I'll run a couple extras like some hormones and stuff in there. If there's something that you're working on, say your thyroid is downregulated and you're trying to make some improvements, hit that at the 6 month mark, and then quarterly you could run a CBC and a CMP. They're $20. I mean, I get them. I pay less than $20 for them for my clients. And you can get them, the max you're going to pay is $35. We blow that all the time. It's not a financial thing. It's an excuse if somebody doesn't want to get them done, honestly. And so I would do a full panel once a year. The 2 quarters in between, do a CBC, CMP lipids, and then at your 6 month mark, get anything that you're trying to monitor or improve done that's maybe a little bit on the bigger side. And I can provide you with a list if you want to share it with people.
Yes, please do. Would love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Please, please, please do not wait to get your blood work done if you haven't done it in the last year. Please go do that. Get a baseline. Start tracking this. This is so, so very important. You can be thinking you're doing all the right things with your nutrition, that you're getting all the exercise and training, whatever's going on. Even if you are on a GLP-1 or you're doing anything that the doctor's prescribing you, please start monitoring your blood work. Connie, I don't know what that is that you want to offer to share, but we can put that in the show notes. What is that? Yeah, what is that? You were
the list of the labs.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, you can share that with me, and I can put that in the inside of the
I will
show notes.
I will do that so that it's ready to show notes, and people can go copy and paste it and hand that list to their provider, or go on the internet and find some. I know Life Extension is easy. I don't get paid for that. Or you go to my website. I might have had it on my website. I don't remember. I did have it.
We can share that. And just tell us where can people find you? Tell us all the places
they
want to follow you.
ConnieNightingale.com. That's my website. I'm on Instagram at ConnieBegani. We do have a podcast we just started. It's more towards strength. Well, I had a long-standing podcast, but I changed it and rebranded it because I needed to get more into some of the strength sports stuff that I was passionate about. But we do have a lot of really great talks on there that are not just isolated to strength sports. They talk about the carryover. And so there's a lot of really good information on there that could be used for anybody, and it's called Unfiltered Strength.
Okay, awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. Yeah. Thank you so, so much, Connie. This is really just bringing awareness, if nothing else. Women need to know that that's something that they need to take a look at, and don't wait. Do it. Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate you so very much. Thanks for taking the time. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface, but I know that it was very, very helpful, and I just can't thank you enough so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Rock on.